So it's called the Integrated Resort Task Force, and I actually launched it in January 2015. And so you may recall that late 2014 is when everyone got excited about the imminent passage of the promotion bill, and that's really when everyone got involved. And so I realized at that point, if the legislation was going to pass imminently, industry needed to have a voice in what the legislation was going to say. And so I proposed to the ACCJ board that we form this new committee. And we've got probably over 200 members at this point from quite a variety of industries. Obviously, people always ask me in particular about the gaming companies themselves, and we have a number of the major gaming companies as members. We don't actually publicize a list of members, so I'm not going to specify individual company names, but I can tell you that most of the major gaming companies expected to have a strong chance at winning one of the RFPs are involved. But not just the gaming companies. I was actually surprised at the wide range of industries that want to get involved. In particular, I was surprised at education and training. Obviously, there's going to be tens of thousands of people, employees involved, and these people have no experience in integrated resorts, and so they're going to have to be trained. And there's a lot of companies involved. There's also a huge number of IT companies involved. Obviously, integrated resorts spend a fortune on IT, and so hardware, software companies, installation companies, support. I mean, it's just amazing the breadth of industries that expect to have a role. On top of that, we've got banks, accountants, law firms, consultants of various sorts. The one industry that has been less involved than I expected is my industry, which is the real estate industry. There aren't that many real estate companies that are looking at this seriously, and that's been a surprise to me. Our committee, our task force has three main roles, one of which is to lobby the government. The second is to provide information to members because other than the gaming operators themselves, I mean, most companies don't look at this full time. And so, our task force provides a very useful role in providing information. And then the third is networking. People get to meet each other at our events. In terms of our influence so far, I think it's been pretty good. We've published a couple of editions of A Viewpoint, which expresses the committee or the ACCJ's views on what the legislation should look like. And not only have we published it, but I've personally delivered it and explained it to a wide variety of Diet members as well as bureaucrats that are involved in drafting the legislation. And they really appreciate having it because it's very useful for them to have on paper sort of a summary of key issues and how industry looks at it. So they like it because ACCJ doesn't represent a single company. We represent a consensus of a variety of companies in industries that expect to participate. There was two proposed ways of choosing locations and consortia. In the first type, the local governments would apply first to have a particular location designated, and then after the central government approved a specific location, then they would do an RFP to choose the consortia. That lost, I think, because first of all, it required two stages. So it required, for example, local approvals twice. So a local government assembly, municipal or prefectural assembly, would have to approve the application to the central government, and they would have to approve the winning consortia. And that was, just ultimately decided it was going to take too long and create all kinds of issues. The method that was chosen was that a local government interested in hosting an integrated resort would hold an RFP, would choose the winning consortium, and then together they would put together an application to the central government. And I don't see any serious problems with that methodology. I think in the first way, if they had done it, a number of local governments that had no chance of ever attracting private companies would waste time and money applying to the central government, and then once they held the RFP, they would found no one wanted to participate. And so this system ensures that only locations with companies that want to invest will actually seek central government approval. Singapore is a city-state, so there's only one level of government. And so in Singapore, there's only one government and they make all the decisions. In Japan, we've got local governments and central government. The central government is not at all involved in deciding which consortia will do this. So the local governments will choose the consortia, and the consortia will most likely contain an international gaming operator, as well as a variety of Japanese and other non-Japanese companies. Once the local government has chosen the consortium, then they will have to seek approval from the central government. But it's not a second RFP process. There's no second bid. It really is more of a suitability test than anything else. I would say there will not be any informal or formal guidelines on that. I think it really is going to be a matter of the power balance between the international operators and the local companies. And so I think that the balance will be different in each location. In my 3 years working on this issue, I've come across a number of Japanese companies that the central government has indicated to me fairly clearly they do not want to participate. And so, if in the case of an international operator, I think if the central government were to reject their participation, the whole bid would fall apart. I think if it's a Japanese company in a minor role, the central government would simply say, take this company out of the consortium. So I don't think that would pose a major challenge. If a group was on the verge of being selected to win the RFP that the central government did not like, I have no doubt the central government would make its views known to the local government, and the local government would take those views into account. It's very simple. If the rule is 3%, let's assume that you want to have a 10,000 square meter casino in Tomokomai. If you divide that by 3%, that means the GFA, gross floor area of the entire integrated resort, must be a minimum of 330,000 square meters. If you then translate that into tsubo, which is the way you calculate construction costs, that gets you to 100,000 tsubo. Assuming that we're talking about luxury construction, and unlike an office building where the owner only has to build a shell and fit out the common areas, whereas the tenants pay for everything else. In this case, the consortium has to pay for literally everything. And a casino is very expensive to build. A luxury hotel is expensive to build. So I'm calculating that the entire cost per tsubo of doing that is about 3 million yen. So 3 million yen times 100,000 tsubo is 300 billion yen, almost $3 billion. Then you've got the cost of the land on top of that. Can't estimate really what that is, but let's say anywhere from 50 to 100 billion. And then presumably you need some type of infrastructure development on top of that. So we're looking at anywhere from 4 to 500 billion yen to develop an integrated resort in Tomokomai. So that's $4 to $5 billion. If you consider the size of the market in Tomokomai, and if you consider all of the other facilities they're going to have to build, I simply do not believe there is a gaming company willing to invest $4 to $5 billion in Tomokomai. There are a number of small and medium-sized gaming companies that are interested in regional cities, but I've met some of them, and I've actually taken them through the calculation, and until I pointed out this to them, none of them had ever actually thought about these issues. So once I say to them, are you prepared to spend $4 to $5 billion? The answer is always no. I think that the government should have different set of rules for small markets and large markets. I think the central government's position is they don't want to select a small market in the first round. They're still concerned about crime and money laundering and addiction, and they think it's easier to deal with in a big city. And so I think in the first round, they want to limit it to Greater Tokyo and Greater Osaka, and then I think ultimately they will change the law to allow IRs in smaller markets. What people are most concerned about right now is the possibility of putting an absolute limit on the casino floor size. The Japanese government continually looks to Singapore as a model for what they're trying to do here, which in general is a fine concept. The Singapore system is quite good. It's had a huge amount of economic benefits to Singapore. It's raised tourism, increased MICE business, had a huge benefit while having very little crime and very little addiction problems. So yeah, as a general concept, trying to replicate the general approach is good. But the idea of applying the same limit of 15,000 square meters to the casino floor area in Japan is insane. Because Singapore is a tiny country. Um, Japan is a very large country. There's simply no reason to apply the same limit here. And if the Japanese government does, what's going to happen is that either companies will say, no, we're not going to get involved, or they're going to build something much smaller than what the Japanese government wants. Because at 15,000 square meters, you can only justify a smaller investment than what the Japanese government thinks it's going to get.